Arcade board mobility has coinop spooked. George Plimpton is pimping Intellivision. And the youth of America sees pro gaming as their future. These stories and many more on this episode of the Video Game Newsroom Time Machine.
I've been waiting a long time for a chance to say this. Stop the presses.
Requiescat in pace.
Makes him crazy, man.
What is a man?
It's me, Mario.
What a mess.
Get over here!
Please save me.
Welcome back to the Video Game Newsroom Time Machine, the podcast where we travel back in time to find out what was making headlines in the video game and home computer industries 40, 30, and 20 years ago. Today we're going to be turning on the time machine going back to October of 1981. But before that, I'm Carl, and I'm back with my co-host, Peter. Hi, Peter. How's it going?
Hi. Okay, so
yeah, we didn't do that today. Sorry.
Yeah, no. Whatever. Still, hi. I'm doing pretty well. I mean, first of all, we are not recording at midnight, so this is pretty good.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Yes, this is true. And also, I'm a be on vacation next week, so looking forward to that.
And when this episode comes out, you'll be on vacation.
Exactly.
And we're recording the first episode of October on the 20th of October. So, yeah, we're doing great on the scheduling.
Exactly.
But hey, for everybody else out there, you guys just got a new interview episode, so you cannot complain about anything. Kevin Hayes, Atari arcade legend and Namco arcade legend, gave us some great scoops on stuff, including a little bit of dirt on or at least some background information, not dirt, but background information on the forming of Tengen. So good stuff that's up on the regular feed. And for our Patreon patrons, they can now go and listen to my interview with Jerry Jewell, the co-founder of Sirius Software, the company that brought us so many awesome games on the Apple II, and his ups and downs and all arounds, especially surrounding the 2600 market and the crash, as well as what he's up to nowadays, which is almost more interesting than the old stuff. So that interview is up for the Patreon supporters. So if you guys want to help us out there, the links are in the show notes below. And I guess I did the pimping early, so I guess we still have to go back to the banter section, or did we already cover that?
Nah, ish. We covered it. Ish.
Good.
Dude, you know what? Let's just dive right into the topics, because today we don't only go back to 1981, but also back to 1941, as I've seen.
Yes, we've got a whole bunch of stuff, but before we can do that, there is two obligatory sections of the show that we must cover. First off, we need to send you on a trip, a voyage of discovery for 7 minutes, to play one of the games that was reviewed in a publication that had the cover date of October of 1981.
Yeah, one of those graphic bombs.
This is a great game, okay? This is a great one. So our segment, 7 Minutes of Heaven, has my intrepid co-host play a game that he has never played before for 7 minutes. And, of course, as longtime listeners of the show know, when we talk about these being news from October 1981, we're using the cover dates of publications for that. So, obviously, the news happened at some point before that. But we have an arcade classic, the game Qix. Qix. Are you ready, Peter?
I am so ready.
Awesome. Then let's jump right into it. Welcome back from your 7 minutes in heaven, Peter. For the uninitiated, how would you describe Qix?
Okay. Kicks is a game where you have a field and you are controlling a cursor and you're moving this cursor around the edges of the field. So the aim of the game is to color most of the field. So when you can draw lines into the field, and you have to draw something like rectangles and shapes. And as soon as you've closed one of those shapes, it's in your color. So aim of the game is to put the entire field or 75% of it into your color. There are certain things that it sounds easy, but there are certain things that try to hinder you doing this. First of all, there are in the beginning too, and the further you progress in the game, there are more and more of those things coming. Sparkly dots, I'd say, that are moving around also on the edges of the field. As soon as they touch you, you die. And also there are some lines within the field that if you haven't finished a rectangle yet, and those moving lines touch the lines of your rectangle, you also lose a life. So you have to be quick to draw your rectangle. And this is basically it. So it's one of those, but this is basically it. It's one of those old games where you have a black background and a white lines, which are the corners and the edges of the field. Also, you draw white lines, and then there is, I think it's blue, the color that your field gets as soon as you finish the rectangle.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So, and is there any? And there's also an enemy in the middle that's sort of a series of lines that are repeating.
Yeah, this is what I was saying. Moving lines within the field. This is like the enemy or whatever. And it's pretty interesting, and I think it gets pretty intense. I mean, there are more and more lines coming. This thing moves around quicker and quicker and quicker. There are more and more enemies on the edges of the field coming, and this makes it pretty challenging.
Oh, definitely. And this game is, the concept itself gets reiterated hundreds of times. There's variations of kicks on pretty much every machine from this point forward. And a lot of players out there may be more familiar with one of the later imitators, the Gal's Panic series of naughty arcade games where instead of just coloring in the blocks when you complete a shape, it reveals a piece of a picture of a half-naked woman. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's dirty stuff.
Really dirty stuff. A naked pixel art woman. Wow.
Well, in the first ones, it's pixel art, and later on it becomes digitized. And then there's other spin-offs where it goes back to cartoony graphics. That's a rabbit hole we don't want to go down right now. The Gal's Panic series.
I mean, you basically can uncover anything that's behind the black screen. But still, I mean, the way the game works, I think it's a pretty timeless game, and also the graphics really don't count when playing this game.
Yeah,
it's really gameplay over graphics.
Oh, very much so. All you need is a minimum amount of resolution to be able to make it challenging to have enough, space to move. And so this game is actually really cool. Now, one of the things I didn't know until I spoke to Ethan, our resident corrector, is that the game was actually not developed in Japan, even though it is being published by a Japanese company. It was actually developed by a couple in the United States. And they would go on to do a whole bunch of other quirky games. It's not like, Space Shooter or something. They were always really doing oddball type of stuff, like kicks. So we're probably going to run into them again at some point. I'm going to try to see if I can pin down the releases of some of their other titles so that we can see a few more works in their oeuvre. Yeah.
Interesting. So it's basically one of those garage games.
I don't know. That I can't tell you. I don't know how it came about, if they actually developed it on their own and then brought it to them, or if they had actually been hired by the U.S. subsidiary of the company to do something as a contract for work for hire. I don't know that. But when you boot it up in MAME, you do get the specs for the hardware. And so it's using a Motorola processor, which I thought was a little odd because I hadn't seen that in a lot of Japanese titles at this point, if any. Yeah. So the fact that they're using a Motorola processor, that kind of gave a hint as to the origin of the machine.
Yeah.
So, okay, cool. So would you recommend this for people to play?
No, totally. I mean, this is one of the few games that really don't. Why do you laugh? I wasn't trying to say that. I was trying to say those are one of the few games that basically cannot age.
That's true. That's true. It's basically like a Tetris almost, in the sense that it's not really going to get old.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. Excellent. So before we can turn on the time machine, we do have one more stop, and that is to our aforementioned friend of the show, Ethan Johnson, in a little segment we call the Department of Corrections. Welcome back, Ethan. So before you start bitch slapping me for everything I got wrong in September of 1981, we have an important order of business, namely...
Of course, it's Peter. He's getting a comment. That's
Except it's not Peter.
Yeah, right.
It's Mads.
It's Mads. But you can't... Mads, it doesn't flow correctly. But anyways, to Mads, he was noting that there was the famous river rafting trip between the Carlstons and the Williamses, and also I think Jerry Jewell was there too. You know, that rafting trip that you talked about in the last issue, because it was in the first thing of Soft Talk. He said that was like the first GDC, and then that was not quite. What I would consider the first GDC is an actual conference. It's in 1977. It's called Gametronics. So when you get to your 2027 episode, you will talk about Gametronics. I will make you. It will be a necessary thing.
Definitely. If you've got a good reference, I can.
It is a whole book.
A date to it.
An entire book.
Awesome.
Yes, I scanned and uploaded it. But it is a very obscure thing, but it has a lot of interesting things. I'll write a blog post by 2027, but we'll get there. And also
include a link to the scan in the show notes.
Yes, of course, it's on archive. And also he was like, he wasn't sure if Castle Wolfenstein was glitching or not. No, that's just the way the collision detection works. When you go up to the wall, it just it goes to all static, and then you're back to where you were before, because I'm guessing that he just had a lot of problems, like making it so your character couldn't move beyond the wall. So he just kind of set things in a grid, and if you went beyond that grid, then you just reset. That is how it's supposed to work.
Holy crap. Okay. That, I guess, acceptable limitations of the time, because none of the reviews I read even mentioned that.
Yeah. It was entirely not a thing, but as soon as you look at it, you're like, what? Why does it keep doing that? So, it is not meant to be a fast-paced kind of game, which fit for it being, the original stealth game.
Yeah, that's true. Very true.
All right, now time to get into some legal procedure as we enter the Department of Corrections. The lawyer gets lawyered.
Oh.
All right.
Hit me in the briefs.
All right. Oh boy. Yeah. Oh, yes, I will.
If we're doing legal puns, I can do this all day.
So you were saying the Odyssey patents kind of petered out in the 80s, but a lot of the the procedure and the suits lasted even into the 2000s, early 2000s. One of the last suits they filed was against Acclaim, which was in bankruptcy, just to kick him in the teeth a little bit.
Wow.
Yeah, and basically, so a patent lasts. Well, it's changed over the years. Like now, it's about 20 years for a U.S. patent, and then back in the day, it was like 15 or something like that. But the patent that counts in the case of the Odyssey is a little strange because they had an original filing, and then there was a refiling. So they kind of got an extension on how far back they could actually sue for past infringement and whatnot. So yeah, that was the thing. But yeah, they do eventually peter out. They became less relevant overall, but they did have a very tight grip on the industry for quite a while.
Oh yeah, there's some fun stuff there. I mean, you get a good glimpse of it from Ralph Baer's autobiography. He talks a little bit about it. All
his details are just wrong. Like every
really?
single year that he says is like wrong.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like he has personal experiences, and you can take those into account. But like he says, they started suing people in '76. I'm like, no, I have this New York Times article that says they started suing in '74. Yeah, that's how, that sort of stuff. And he says he first did his depositions in 76 as well. Nope, I have this deposition from 75. So, that's, yeah. He was old.
Yeah, that's true.
But, yeah, we've had to reevaluate Baer's memoir as a resource because he had the opportunity to cite things, and where he does provide information is very good, but we'll leave that to another day when sometime we will talk about the Odyssey. Oh yeah, next year you should be talking about the Odyssey for your 72 jumps.
Exactly.
So I would like to I'll come on and we'll do a segment on the real Odyssey, the real story.
Actually, that would be a cool extra episode to do.
Yeah.
I mean, we did our one last year, so might as well do another one next year.
But of course, we're going to have something in between. But let us put that to the side
true,
and let us move on to the next part, which we will discuss Radar Scope. You said it was the first game Nintendo released in the U.S., and no, this is not right, and it is just an endless thing that goes back to Kent, and he didn't know that they had earlier releases, both through other companies and from themselves.
Really? What did they release themselves?
It was one of their Space Invaders clones. It was the one that was being distributed by the guys who would run Far East Video. They were releasing that themselves.
Okay.
I can't remember. It
wasn't released under Nintendo of America. It was still. It was imported. It had Nintendo's branding, but it wasn't actually distributed by Nintendo.
I can't remember the full exact thing on this, but either way, you can't call it the first game they released in the U.S.
Gotcha. Okay.
And also, you said it was terrible. I have looked at many, many space shooters from this period. Radar Scope is not bad. It's not like I would rather play Galaxian, but it's not terrible. It's fine.
I played it as well, and it's just so. It's a one-trick pony because of the whole. The sprites get slightly less chunky as they get closer to you, and when you consider that it's coming out after Gorf and Defender and stuff, it just feels primitive by comparison. But I understand what you're saying. There's a lot of worse trash out on the market at this point.
And I think there are, of traditional shooters that are in the kind of Galaxian Phoenix mold. There are better, like Astro Fighter from Sega and things like that. But it is not garbage.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I might have been a little harsh on it. Just a little.
And this next note, I kind of forgot what I was going for, but I think it has something to do with the Frogger franchise, because I think you were saying something to the effect of it didn't have a huge continuing, series to it, but it did under Hasbro. Like really, Hasbro and Infogrames and Atari all tried to make something out of Frogger.
Yeah, but that's 20 years later.
Yeah, but I can't remember the context of this note. So
it was because both Frogger and Donkey Kong came out in the same issue of Playtime, or Playmeter. Sorry, not Playtime. Playtime's a German magazine in the 90s. Playmeter, and it was just the idea that, I mean, Donkey Kong's going to get Donkey Kong Jr., Donkey Kong 3, Mario Brothers, basically all in that lineage coming out of that one game in relatively short succession, whereas Frogger is that one game, and you don't really see a lot with the Frogger character in this time period. And yeah, I do agree with you. They tried to bring back Frogger, and they're still, I believe, releasing games.
And they have a TV show.
IP. Oh, that's right. Is that still running?
I mean, it was currently running under Peacock, but
Oh wow.
Yeah. And yeah, the Frogger Ancient Shadows is kind of a meme game, but it's not bad actually. It's like it's got some cool, like it's a puzzle adventure game. It's not terrible.
I've never even heard of that one. Frogger, what's it called?
It's either Deadly Shadow or Ancient Shadow, something like that, for PS2, Xbox, GameCube.
Oh wow!
I have it on PS2 around here somewhere.
Okay, now I recognize the cover art. Yeah.
Yeah, they had this specific design. They did a couple games with that. But anyways, let's not talk about the future of Frogger. Let us talk about your bad pronunciation, of which we will get into several things on this in this overall scope of September of the ones. And it is Colossi. I think you're saying Colossuses or Colossus.
Or I think, wasn't it, I was joking about I didn't know how to pronounce which version it was, if it was a Latin word or a Greek word, and I couldn't remember where the rule goes, if it's Colossi.
He's expecting me to try to remember what his context was.
Yeah. I know, it's been a while for me too. So, okay, yeah, Colossi. I stand corrected.
And then I think to this one, you may have been saying that the JAMA standard is like just around the corner. You like using that phrase, Carl, just around the corner. It's 4 years just around the corner. JAMA is 1985.
Okay, yeah, 4 years is a little bit more than just around the corner. That's true.
Yes. So yeah, until JAMA, there's not any real big standard that persists across the industry. They cobble together something, but yeah, the Japanese are allowed to have a toehold on the market once they establish JAMA.
Cool. And not undeservedly so.
Yeah, they made good games. And you said to the effect of this kit stuff, as you're talking in the aftermath of the Visions 81 conference, which is going to be a big feature in the book that I'm writing from Sega. You said that like the distributor started to become obsolete, and no, the distributor is actually at this current moment still the most powerful player in the industry, because a lot of the manufacturers have really kind of bottomed out, and they rely on the distributors to get them anywhere at all. They can't sell direct unless they're doing some weird stuff like Stern. So the distributor did not become obsolete because of kits. They worked kits into this system.
Okay.
Distributors were afraid they were going to be super minimized, but that did not actually happen.
Which is something they were going to be discussing in a few moments on this very episode.
Yes. And, when it will come back in 83 when kits really start to take off.
Gotcha. Now, you've just hinted at something Stern. What did Stern do? That was
well,
weird.
Stern Pinball nowadays, they have a several tiered system of pinball where they sell collector's editions of pinball to consumers. And that's the highest revenue out of their lot. But for the places that are still buying them for a location, they're still going through a distributor.
Okay. Interesting. And why? What's the benefit of going through the distributor for?
Because they are interfacing by region with all of these different locations, and in many cases, the distributor has certain agreements with operators who have their agreements with location owners. The trust in the industry is kind of paramount, and that's something that is why people kind of look at it suspiciously, because everything's kind of in a you got to know who you got to know.
Gotcha. Okay, makes sense.
All right. Another misspeak. You said the co-founder of Sirius, or I guess he's the founder of Sirius Software, was Jeff Jewell. No, Jerry Jewell.
And the worst part is I just interviewed him, and the interview just went up for our patrons. So if you want to listen to it right now, become a patron for just as low as $1 a month. Jerry Jewell interview. It's a lot of fun. He's a cool guy. He's a very cool guy. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I reached out to him quite a while ago, but then I never followed up. So all to Carl on this one. And finally, you said the Children's Workshop. No, it is CTW, Children's Television Workshop.
I've made that mistake several times. I don't know why. I just cannot work through that. Okay, so Children's Television Workshop.
We're at the end of September 1981. Go on to your great and merry pastimes, and we will see you here next time for September of 1991's corrections.
Ethan, thank you for your service.
On the one side, there were no really major corrections as far as I see it. And on the other hand, collision detection back in the day worked by as soon as you walk against the wall, you get a weird sound and the screen makes funny stuff. This is how it worked.
Basically, I mean, as far as, Ethan understood it a little bit better than me, but when you watch the gameplay of Castle Wolfenstein, the characters are clearly walking on a grid. It's almost like they're jumping like 6 or 7 pixels or whatever at a time. Yeah. And so because you're walking through these rooms with distinct walls, and we're talking about the Apple II hardware, so there's no hardware sprites or anything. So whenever you walk in a direction that would actually have you bump up against a wall, you got this weird screen glitch and it made a noise. And that was probably just a compromise that they made to do the calculation. Oh, you're not allowed to go in that direction. So it was probably just something Silas Warner never managed to actually iron out of that original version of the game. I don't know if it happens also in the sequel, Escape from Castle Wolfenstein, but I do know it doesn't happen in the Commodore 64 version, which comes out a couple years later.
Okay.
Yeah. But the Apple II is such a primitive piece of hardware. I mean, you have to remember, at this point, it's already a 4-year-old piece of hardware. And
yes, yeah. Of course.
So it's deep 70s tech. So getting a bunch of characters running around at the same time on the screen in any form or fashion is weird. And Mads and I were both a little confused about it because I read several reviews of the game from the time. Nobody even mentioned this weird glitching thing when you hit a wall because everybody was just – it wasn't normal, but people were just used to – you're going to have to do weird things. And plus the people writing the reviews are all coming from this era of you programmed your own programs. They're all still kind of excited by the idea that you can actually buy something somebody else already programmed. Wow. And if you're programming this stuff yourself, you're used to having to live with the bugs that you couldn't figure out how to solve. So yeah. It's a lot of speculation on my part, but I think that there's a lot of those elements that come together here in this moment where at the time everybody's just very, very forgiving of the crap that's happening on the screen.
Yeah, I was about to say people back then were way more forgiving. Nowadays when a game is released, you expect it to run flawlessly. Of course. They hardly any times do, but...
you expect it to run flawlessly on day one. That's also why you're totally cool with the 5 gigabyte patch you have to download right out of the box.
If you're lucky, it's a 5 gigabyte patch. Let me remind you on Cyberpunk or
Yeah.
What is it, like 50 gigabyte? You have 50 gigabyte on your disk, and then you download another 50 gigs.
Yeah, and only then to find out that that's just so that it sometimes works.
Exactly, and then it still doesn't work.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus.
I didn't follow up actually on that. I have to look it up what the state of the game is right now.
Last I heard, it's getting better. It's still not 100%, but it's getting better. But I think it's still completely unplayable on last gen systems, which is what it was originally supposed to come out on. But well.
Isn't it out for like a year already?
Yeah. They're just going to keep patching in. As long as they don't drop the price too much, they may still be able to turn a profit on it. But
no, they already turned a profit on it.
Probably just because people didn't return it. I mean, how many people returned it is the question.
Yeah, but I don't think that were this. I don't think there were many people that returned this game.
That is a good question. I mean, basically, they're a stock corporation, so their next annual report is going to have to reveal that. And
but they should have issued a warning in between if they are not up to target, and they did not. So,
well, yeah, not up to target is not the same as actually revealing the numbers. Remember,
but they didn't even do that, So we don't have the numbers. But if there is no, how would you say this in English? No profit warning, no revenue warning.
A revenue warning or a profit warning. Yeah, I mean, those things do usually have to come out. It all just depends on which stock market they're on and what the regulations look like.
Exactly.
Yeah, but okay. We have business to attend to. We need to turn on the time machine. And even though our main jump this time is going back 40 years to October of 1981, we are starting off with something a little bit different, even for us. We're going back not 40, not 50, not 60, not 70, but 80 years to October of 1941. Are you ready, Peter?
Dude, we are in Germany. We shouldn't go back to 1941. We should not do that.
Good point. We're going back to a land of magic and wonder, New York State, in October of 1941. And we have no sound effect for this, so just imagine like a barbershop quartet or something singing a song in the background.
Oh, yes, and be happy if you have the right skin color. Anywho, sorry, but...
Yeah, good point.
Anyway, let's get into topic before this gets ugly. Judges denounce pinball as gambling.
A panel of 3 justices of the New York State Supreme Court hearing a case concerning the constitutionality of a ban on pinball machines in Teaneck Township. The lawyer for the township wanted to demonstrate the machine in question to the justices, who refused to allow it. The grounds were, according to Justice Joseph L. Bodine, that the township didn't, quote, have to argue that this is a gambling device, end quote. Or, sorry, it keeps going. I've got a lot of quotes here. This article is just too awesome. This is from the New York Times, by the way. So, quote, I have talked with my associates, and they agree it is a gambling device. Men and boys are not going to stand around sticking nickels in a wall without getting money back. In this day and generation, it may be that youth has so deteriorated that it has become a practice. But if so, some doctor should place them in an insane asylum and have their heads examined. End quote. He also asked that the machine, which had been in the courtroom for 2 days, covered by a sheet, be removed. And again, quote, will you please take this thing away tonight? I cannot get away from these infernal things. They have them wherever I go. And And then the Justice Joseph L. Persky, another of the three judges on the panel, said, quote, "It is about taxing one's credulity to say that a machine is not used for gambling. Surely it is not for ornamental purposes, covered or uncovered."
Oh, Lord.
Yeah. Now, we should clarify here. We need to clarify. In 1941, the definition of a pinball machine is not what we think of as a pinball machine today.
Okay.
Because,
so what is a pinball machine in 1941?
Well, the flipper thing, flippers at the bottom that you control the ball with don't get introduced until 47. So at this point, at this point what the machine is, it's not like a slightly inclined table. It's usually a machine that's glued to the wall or tapered to the wall. Sometimes it's also a table, but it's usually on a wall. And you have a little plunger, just like on a flipper, on a pinball table. You pull the plunger out, and the spring shoots a ball up, and then the ball is just basically randomly bouncing around on pegs, and there will be little electrical lights flashing when certain things get touched and so forth. And then sooner or later, the ball will fall down into the gutter or something.
Oh,
and depending on where it lands, that's the point value that you get. So at this point, if you're familiar with the Japanese game Pachinko, it's basically in that league. Pachinko is still a little bit different, but it's in that league. So there is an argument to be made here that there is no skill in the game at this point. But these things have spread like wildfire. During the Depression, they become hugely popular because it's like a cheap, quick entertainment that poor people can enjoy. It's something that you can put up in a bar, and it really doesn't annoy anybody too much. And in the day and age where, radios come out, there's no TV yet, and this stuff will have, little blinking lights. It'll have sound effects and stuff. It's basically like, a little special effects spectacle in this era. And so, these things, they're everywhere, which is why I really like the quotes from the judge about, he can't get away from it. He doesn't need to see this thing. But the fact that they're not gambling devices for the most part. I mean, there are some that are being used as gambling devices by some people, where it's like, you pay this much, and if you get a certain score, you'll get money back and stuff. That would make it a gambling device because there's no skill involved. But for the most part, people are just, they want to pass the time a little bit, throw some pennies in this thing, and then play a few balls.
Yeah.
And the fact that this whole idea of they're spending money to play this game without getting something back, these old judges just can't even conceive of this idea. So what is going to become commonplace when Pong and Pac-Man and Street Fighter and everything else, where you're just throwing this money in, you're not going to get anything out. You're just getting a minute or two of entertainment out of it.
It's basically like going into a movie, just way shorter. You want some entertainment, you put some money in, you get some entertainment out of it.
Exactly,
That's basically what it is.
But these guys would probably not consider the movie not that, because they can see it as analogous to theater or whatever else they've experienced. But these guys are so staunchy that there's a new form of entertainment. It must be bad, and it must be a sign of the degenerate culture of this generation. So these quotes were just too cool not to mention here, and really show the evolution of pinball, because it's these kind of arguments and these kind of bans on pinball that are really going to spread far and wide. And pinball is going to basically be outlawed in many places. In New York, it's outlawed all the way through to the 70s, and then even past that in some areas, and very, very highly restricted because it's still seen as a gambling activity. Even after the flippers are installed. But so this was just a cool little slice of this moment in time and the place of the coin-operated amusement game at this moment.
You know, you also caused a pretty nostalgic moment for me right now when you explained how this flipper worked.
Why?
Why? Because it reminded me of the game Flintstones on Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Flintstones Treasure of Sierra Madrox. And they have a mini game in there where you have exactly this kind of, pinball.
Oh, so they had a pinball mini game in there with flippers.
Pinball mini game. Yeah, no, without flippers.
Oh, without
really
flippers.
Just, you shoot the ball up and you wait where it lands, and this either gives you a heart or some stones or coins or stars or whatever. And then I remembered the utterly ridiculous passwords for when level passwords.
Oh yeah,
you should look it up. It's awesome.
Cartridge game passwords. Oh
Lord, 15. It's a 3x5 grid, and in each grid there's the possibility of I think like 5 different, whatever can go into those grids, into those fields.
Oh wow.
And I remember me as a kid, like when I reached a new level, like being there with a sheet of paper and drawing that stuff, and then actually writing next to it what I drew because I couldn't recognize it anymore. This was just ridiculous. And this in the times before mobile phones where I can just take a quick snapshot. Really. No way to brute force your way through those passwords.
Oh wow. Yeah, I'm sorry that you had to endure that. And,
I mean, it was super fun.
Yeah, I'm looking at Moby Games right now. They don't see a screenshot of the pinball. Oh wait, there is a mini game, Balls of Fun, but that's a target practice mini game. I see here. I don't see that mini game shown here in the screenshots at least, but I'll try to find a video of it and post it online.
Oh yeah.
Cool. Okay, then let's turn the clock forward 20 years and check in on October of 1961. Again, no sound effects, sorry.
No sound effects, and again, still having problems with the wrong skin color. But this doesn't matter right now.
Oh, dude, that applies throughout. Okay, that hasn't ended, unfortunately. So,
and 2001, still having problems. Although it's actually pretty bad thinking about it.
2021, dude. Okay.
It's getting political. Anyway, 1961, satellite positioning system underway.
The New York Times has an in-depth article about the ongoing efforts to build a network of satellites that would allow for accurate navigation from the ground. The Transit Satellite Navigation System would encompass over 40 satellites and be in use until its replacement by GPS in 1996.
This is actually pretty cool that in 1961 the foundation for the GPS was...
Well, actually, the cool thing is it actually started, the first launch of a satellite in this system was in 59. And the first satellites were just using more conventional power sources, but the later ones would actually be using nuclear energy cores to power them long term. Yeah. So,
awesome.
This was a very, a big deal. And of course, is it directly related to gaming? Today, yes. Games like Pokemon Go and the Harry Potter one and all these other, GPS-based, games and AR games wouldn't be possible without this kind of tech. So, the fact that we're slowly moving in this direction, obviously still decades and decades away from where it would be commercially viable, especially for games, but the infrastructure is slowly emerging.
Yeah, and this is what I say. It's utterly fascinating. Thinking of the processing power of those days, even to shoot anything into space is utterly fascinating to me.
Oh, definitely. And it is 61 too. I mean, this is Space Race is going full blown. You know, it's a question of who's going to have an advantage when all the rockets are going back and forth and up there and stuff. So yeah, this is a cool period for the advancement of this kind of tech. So really cool. And that ends our back. Let's turn the time machine to our actual expected jump to October of 1981.
Now with sound.
Yeah, now with sound effect.
Rapidly becoming an international craze. 1981.
This is only the first step in newspapers by computer.
Right in the midst of it, thank you.
Welcome to October of 1981. Peter, what's our first story?
The U.S. arcade industry is hesitant about interchangeable kits.
Coinop trade magazine Playmeter has 3 multi-page articles this month that delve into the industry's reaction to Sega Gremlin's Change-A-Game arcade cabinet system. The new system we talked about last month, which would allow operators to switch out the boards in a cabinet as well as the controls and artwork to have a new game at a fraction of the price of buying a whole new cabinet, is making distributors nervous, whose main role in the business is as a middleman for cabinets between manufacturers and operators. The relative ease of changing the game boards is something they fear operators will take on themselves. Competing manufacturers think, for the most part, that it will stifle creativity and innovation, especially in screen and controller technology, which is still evolving at this time. Finally, operators seem pretty upbeat about it without wanting to sound too upbeat, probably for fear of angering manufacturers or distributors on whom they are still dependent.
Yeah, I think it's more an economic hesitation than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, it is changing the business model, and so people who have either invested in a lot of cabinet manufacturing capacity see it as a threat to their investment. The people who are looking at their margins concerning, how much can they make off of the individual devices and so forth. There's a lot going on there. There really is. But I mean, ultimately, the Change-A-Game standard in and of itself is not going to become the industry standard. JAMA will become the industry standard, but this idea of being able to switch out the arcade boards and reuse the cabinet for different games is here to stay. It's just unavoidable because the cabinets cost too much and they're really, for the most part, not adding value. So, and this is actually something we're going to be talking about next week when we go to the AMOA show in 1991, because that is one of the, once consoles really started intruding on the turf of the arcade games are going to have to start distinguishing themselves more and more through the extras that it can be built into a cabinet or the capacities of the controllers that go beyond what you can get at home, which of course is also going to up the cost of the individual machines. But at this point, I mean, if you've got a game like Pac-Man and you want to upgrade it to something else that is also just one joystick and maybe some extra buttons, drill a couple holes, put the buttons in, put a different game in, it's really not rocket science. And it will take until, like Ethan pointed out, until 85 for JAMA to create that standard that everybody sticks to. But at this point, we can see that everybody's thinking about it, and the fact that Playmeter, one of the preeminent magazines for the trade, is spending like 20 pages on this is a huge deal.
Yeah.
We talked about one big development in the arcades. There's another big development in the arcades on the horizon.
Yes. Taito's Moon Shuttle introduces continuous play.
Taito of America is claiming a first with Moon Shuttle, a space shooter that allows players to buy more ships at any time during play by tossing in another coin. This, quote, continuous play, end quote, function will answer the demands of operators for more income per player and allow for those high score seekers to go all the way.
So, pay to win has been born.
Basically, yes. Now, some sources do say that SNK's game Fantasy is the first one that allows continue function, but that just came out in Japan first. It doesn't actually get a U.S. release until '82. So, at least as far as the U.S. is concerned, this is the first game that has a buy a continue function. And I didn't go back to play Moon Shuttle in research for this, so I'm not quite sure how this works. But because they're promising that the high score chasers will be able to, get even bigger scores by throwing more money in, I'm guessing that it really is, you just keep playing and your score keeps going up. Now, most games that have a continue function later on will put the kibosh down on that. It's like, okay, you can continue from the place you left off in the game, but your score is usually going to get reset to 0 or something, because otherwise the high score is meaningless. Or it'll be a game where the score doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so remember we talked about this a couple months ago already, how the games are getting more diversified as far as their target markets are concerned. And so the people who are chasing the high scores are these hardcore people. And they are becoming a separate market, a different market from the casual gamer. And the casual gamer might just be like, oh, I want to see what comes next. I'll throw in another quarter just for shits and giggles, and so forth. So, and we've also seen the birth now of, the side-scrolling shooter, where the levels are more fixed, and it's not just, randomly generated stuff, or it's not just, wave upon wave of the same types of attacks. The game Gorf, had different types of levels. So as the games get more complex, as we start to get more of a story element, and that's what Fantasy was. It was sort of like an action RPG. I'm using that term very, very loosely. As these games get more complex, as they end up having a beginning, middle, and end as far as a story is concerned, and you can actually get to the end of the game, this idea of paying to continue to play to see what comes next is really going to become a motivating factor for a lot of people. So, yeah, it is a change to the way the arcade game business is going to work.
Huh. Hey, how did it work in Dragon's Lair on the arcade? Can you pay it to continue, or did you always have to start in the beginning? Okay.
No, you had to start from the beginning again.
Right, it makes more sense financial wise. I mean, those guys, they really invented pay to win. So, yeah, high score chasers. Cool. Cool. I mean, it's a business model, and the business of business is business.
And there you go. And you got to keep that coin drop going. You need more coins dropping in the box.
Yeah, drop them like it's hot. Okay. By the way, speaking of dropping stuff, Atari and GCC drop suits. And also, did you set me up for this transition?
I was trying to. I was trying to. I didn't know if it would actually work. It almost didn't work, but yeah, okay. So Atari and General Computer Corporation have dropped their lawsuits arising from the Super Missile Attack add-on boards for Atari's Missile Command arcade games. GCC will continue to make and market their enhancement kit according to Replay magazine and the issue of the legality of such a kit, which is what GCC sought to get a ruling on from the courts in their request for a declaratory judgment, has not been resolved. Now, as a refresher, GCC was making these boards that basically changed certain aspects of a missile command machine, but you still needed to have a missile command machine for this to work. So they're not copying anything of Atari's. And they had originally asked the court to make the ruling as to whether or not these add-on boards were legal. If you're not changing the original code, you're just adding stuff on top of it, and you're not taking away any sales from Atari of missile command machines because people still need to buy the missile command machine. Are you really violating copyright? Because you haven't really altered Atari's stuff. You've just, interrupted certain things from getting to the screen and replaced them with your own. And you didn't claim that it was an Atari product or that you owned Missile Command.
Right.
And because of this settlement, the court will not decide this, make this decision one way or the other. And you could argue that Atari, there was too much at stake for Atari if this had gone against them. And at the same time, GCC, if it did go against them, they would be on the line for so much in damages. And so we talked initially about the suit back in August of 81, in our jump then. And in the meantime, what's been going on in the background is that, or as part of this agreement, GCC has said, okay, we're not going to do any more of these add-on boards without getting permission from the original manufacturers. And they've been working on an add-on board for Pac-Man, which was called Crazy Auto, and that one's going to get a quick facelift into a little game called Ms. Pac-Man. And nobody's ever heard of that one before. Totally obscure.
Absolutely. However, so they basically were in a lawsuit, and then they decided, oh wait, the risk for each of us is way too high, let's just drop that stuff.
Yeah, they basically came to an agreement and asked the court to close the case. Yeah. And that's how this kind of stuff goes down most of the time. Once you let the judge decide, you lose a lot of control. You don't really get to decide what the judge is going to decide, but you do have control over what you agree to outside of court. So,
because on the sea and also in court, you're on the hand of God.
I don't want to say judges are like God. God tends to be less capricious. That's a joke. Maybe. Okay. Moving on.
Let's move on. Atari also settles with Cinematronics.
Back in our April 1980 jump, we talked about Cinematronics suing Atari over the use of vector technology for games like Asteroids. Atari has now settled that case out of court.
Okay. So how did they settle? They just paid him a buttload of money?
We don't know, but there was probably a payment of money, yes, to make this go away. So whatever trade secrets or patents Cinematronics was falling back on here, there's been money flowing, and it's done. Now, I'm trying to do this off of memory, but I believe it was an episode of a friend of the show, Alex Smith's They Create Worlds podcast, where he went into the history of Cinematronics, and there was some tech that may or may not have gotten to Atari through Cinematronics employees, if I remember correctly, and I'll try to look it up and put it in the show notes. And so that was sort of the foundation for the lawsuit, that Atari may have learned some tricks of how to use this without doing the research themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or at least the patents already were at Cinematronics, and so Atari, just by doing it themselves was violating the patents. I can't remember all the details, but whatever the case may be, Atari's at the top of the world. We've talked about their earnings. They can throw as much money around as they want to make lawsuits go away.
You shut up and take my money.
Exactly.
Okay. Speaking about taking money, Williams' revenues double.
See, now that was me setting up a transition. Talking about money.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
It's going to be one of those days. I'm sorry, everybody who's listening. It's just one of those days. So,
but you also have to mention there hasn't been an episode where it took us longer to record that thing than this one. It took us a couple of days.
This is true. There was a break that keen listeners might be able to tell where we recorded one portion of this early in the morning and then another portion of this way, way late at night on a different day. But, that's just looking behind the curtains. Okay.
Well, your voice has a tell.
Yeah.
Anyway,
let's get
exactly. But yeah, Williams' revenues double. Go.
Williams, maker of pinball tables and, as of late, arcade hits like Defender, have announced that their third quarter revenue jumped 104%. This is in large part due to their increased video game revenue and despite softening demand for their pinball product.
So Defender basically more the cash cow.
Defender is the cash cow. I think they've got 2 or 3 other games also out at this point, but it's mostly Defender. Stargate, which is the sequel to Defender, is also already out at this point, but I don't think that played into the revenues. Now, their quarter, the quarter that they're reporting ended on June 30th.
Mm.
And I mean, if we were talking about Atari or Coleco, companies that are doing a lot of sales in the consumer market, obviously the fourth quarter or the Christmas quarter is the important one. But as people who have listened to my interview with Jim Trucano know, that the arcade operators, the arcade business is really about a summer activity. So everybody's buying stuff for the summer because that's when the kids are out of school. That's when you want the big new pinball and video game machines to attract them. So
really, summer? Isn't there also a winter break or an autumn break?
In the United States, those are like 1 or 2 weeks each, whereas summer break is a 3-month break from school.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so it's not like here in Europe where, summer break is 5 to 6 weeks, and then you have like 3 weeks for spring, and then you got 2 or 3 weeks for Christmas and stuff, where you have these longer breaks spread out. In the States, you got 3 months in the summertime where the kids have nothing to do. And that's also why. Well, and this is why all the big movies come out in summertime, because the kids can just go and watch the same movie 5 times. Or, you got the arcades and stuff.
Now I get the connection. Now I get the connection, because usually in the summer, why do you want to go into a movie theater except for when it's air conditioned?
The air conditioned is one of them, but the other one is also the kids have time. That's why you get the big blockbusters in the summertime.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. It's so weird. Back when I was a kid, I thought that the breaks were way too short and far in between, but now I have the feeling there are always a break.
Yeah. And it's just one of those things. Well, trust me, a 3-month summer break ends up being too long. You want to go back to school after that much time.
Yeah.
You're just tired of it. And the problem is also that parents can't take that much time off. Yeah. So ultimately you do end up with these long periods where, you just got to do something where you can be semi-unsupervised. And the arcades were one of those activities, or going and playing a video game at the local convenience store. All of those things are things that I have done. Or go down to the bowling alley. Oh my God, I spent time at the bowling alley.
At the bowling alley?
Yeah, because bowling alleys always have a little arcade section off to the side.
So, did you also meet with your friendly neighborhood dealers there behind the bowling alley? Silent Bob?
No. The Silent Bob was not selling outside a bowling alley. He was selling outside of a convenience store. That's the movie Clerks.
Yes.
No. We would, the bowling alley was a place, you'd bowl a little. And in the arcade, I mean, the one near my grandfather's house was where I hung out in Seattle. I mean, what did they have back in the 90s? The heydays of me being there. There was this original Street Fighter 2 cab. Remember Tekken, the original Tekken on this big screen. It was pretty cool. Star Trek The Next Generation, the pinball game. They also had a Cowboys of Moo Mesa arcade. Hook the arcade. Okay, those two weren't all that great, but it was always, there's always at least 3 pinball machines and a bunch of arcade cabs. Sometimes they'd be switched out, but like Street Fighter 2 was there for so many years. It just never got old. So, yeah.
Did they also send you to space camp?
No, space camp. Didn't have that kind of money. I was a poor kid. Didn't go to no space camp. If I want a space camp, I better put a fishbowl on my head. No. Okay.
All right. Thanks for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Glad to be of service. I'll be here all week, everybody. Remember, tip your waitresses. Okay. So let's move away from the arcades, sort of.
Yes, please.
Into the home.
And into the home. To the book, as I was about to say. Coleco signs licensing deal with Midway.
The deal will allow Coleco to create tabletop electronic versions of Midway's biggest hits, such as Pac-Man and Galaxian, and be the birth of the amazing Coleco mini arcade game lineup. You have no idea what I'm talking about, do you?
No, but I'm sure you'll explain it to me. So.
Okay, so back in the 80s, and again, not the rich kid here, therefore, this was never, ever even a consideration in my world. But there was this great little lineup. Now, we've talked about, I should go back a step. We've talked about the handheld game market, right? Little electronic games.
Yeah.
Now, those electronic games, those LED games, they were powered by batteries, and some of them, would light up, and especially they were using what is it called? I believe it's VFD was the technology. It's sort of really, really these cool, bright symbols would pop up that weren't just, dots like LEDs were. And these things required a lot of power, and they were still as limited as you were going to be on any other kind of device, like an LCD game where, all the sprites have to be set in stone and you can't have one thing on top of another and so forth. But they created fairly reasonable, given the technological limitations, recreations of a bunch of arcade games. And the best part was that it wasn't just this flat thing you held in your hand. It was actually looked like a tiny little replica of the arcade cabinet that you would put on a desk. So think about, maybe 10, 15 centimeters high, deep, with a little joystick and buttons, and they were pretty damn cool. More than pretty damn cool. They were pretty freaking awesome if you could get your hands on them. and they were not cheap. But they were also pretty. I mean, a lot of people had them. I mean, but you'd get like one or two of them. Here, I'll send you a link. I'll put this link. This link is going to be in the show notes. You can see all of these things. And this is the Donkey Kong one that I'm showing you right now. So you got a joystick, you got the button, you've got the arcade sidebar artwork. So the arcade cabinet itself had this artwork on the sides. And yeah, just really, really cool setup, multicolored sprites. I mean, just two colors, but the fact that that Mario is represented by different elements that are lighting up in different colors, it really felt kind of like you were playing the arcade game, or at least we convinced ourselves that that's what it felt like back in the day. And so Coleco is first signing up Midway. Later on, they're going to sign a deal with Nintendo. And these relationships that Coleco is building here for these electronic devices, some of these will also carry over to when they launch the ColecoVision, their console system, their console game system. And they are also going to focus very heavily on getting these arcade licenses, at least the ones that Atari hasn't already snapped up, for themselves. And if you want to hear more about that, of course, I also interviewed the guy who was running this program over at Coleco. So the links are in the show notes to those interviews. So, but yeah, so this is going to give us those really cool Coleco mini arcade games.
Okay. How much were they actually?
Oh, that is an excellent question. I probably have to look up the Sears catalog for 81. Let me see.
Well, just give me a rough estimate. Is it like $100 or $50?
No. On 1981. I can give you the exact number.
The exact number. Okay, go for it.
Here's the exact number. This is what it would have cost if you had purchased it from the Sears catalog in 1981. This is the Christmas catalog. I'll put a link to the actual page in the show notes. As soon as I find it, and this whole waiting period I will cut out.
I really thought you run.
You thought I was going to just keep doing that? You know how long these freaking Christmas catalogs are? They're like hundreds of pages long. Finding the page is not something that just happens in an instant, okay? I understand people at home listening to their podcasts are all like, oh, I want efficiency in my entertainment. Well, guess what? You get what you pay for here, and efficiency is not an option.
Yeah, I think.
Oh wow, you could even buy guns. You could buy guns off of this thing. I forgot what the 80s was like. Yeah, no, dude, this is, oh man, I probably actually had this catalog as a kid at one point. That's just the nature of that beast back then. And here we go. Kitchen sets for kids. Where are the video games? Oh, here are the video games.
So this is basically, the video game section is the section that you basically just cut out, put on some access, and gave to your parents for shopping.
No, in 1980, I didn't care about games. I mean, I'm 81. I'm 5 years old. Video games are totally uninteresting to me at this point in my life.
So, when video games were interesting to you, was the Sears catalog still a thing?
Well, yeah, the catalog was still a thing by the time video games. But see, I jumped over console. I started off with a computer, so that is why it wasn't interesting.
Master Race Trader.
It's just that was what I had. Okay, it doesn't look like the Coleco arcade games made it out to this catalog. They're not in this catalog.
You promised.
I promised, I know, and I cannot deliver on said promise. I'd have to look up the 82 catalog. Let me see what the 82 catalog says. And the 82 catalog is, wait until we get to 82. Oh my God, wait until we get to 82. That's going to be a whole different shebang. Get through all the clothing, all the toys. Here are the video games. Oh, so many pages. Oh my God. Yeah, 82, the whole thing of video games is like 3 times longer. Oh, you could actually buy pinball tables for the home. Wow.
Coleco Pac-Man, the original price is $59.97 at Toys R Us.
$59.97.
Yeah, this is what I see on handheldmuseum.com.
Okay, and I'm looking here. And they have the Frogger one for $59.99 here.
Okay, so $60.
Yeah. And Defender, which is the one that we actually saw in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, the price was cut off by the website. Oh, you
You'll never know.
The website cut off I am so ticked off right now. So yeah, the Defender is right here, but it got cut off. So yeah, but you get the idea that these are not cheap devices, especially when you consider that in the same year and the same catalog, I can buy the VCS port of Pac-Man for $29.99.
Oh.
And even though the VCS version of Pac-Man is not hugely competent, it's a lot better. And the VCS itself is only $150. So if I buy 3 of those things or 1 VCS, I'm already starting to get money ahead.
Yeah. However, I have to say, it's hard for me to picture how kids can sit in front of those really not too good screens and play this game. But then again, I had a Game Boy Color.
Exactly. Well, and the cool thing is, if you do want to experience this, there are emulated versions of this on archive.org.
Yes, but still, then I have my high-end computer screen.
No. At some point, no. Well, remember, the stuff that's on these screens is not pixel graphics. It's like an LCD game. So the shapes are perfectly round, and the shapes are really nice. They're not blocky graphics. It's quite literally a shape that is being lit up through the sheet of plastic and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's like, have you ever played one of those little handheld games, the really cheap ones where it's, handful of, that's what it is, but it's brightly lit up. It really glows when you look at it.
Huh.
And that's actually why they have aged really, really well. But yeah, from a gameplay mechanic, it's takes some imagination to figure out what the hell is going on. But tell you what, we will get back to it and we will take a look at it. When these things come out, I may just make one of them the 7 Minutes in Heaven. That'll give you a chance to experience it in all its glory.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, let's go for that.
Oh, I'm going to have to cut the crap out of this whole segment. Okay. Back to our regularly scheduled program now that we have gone on this discourse about what tabletop games were like in the 80s. And we're talking about the console market also heating up.
Exactly. George Plimpton to promote Intellivision sweepstakes.
Literary figure George Plimpton will be appearing on Mattel's Intellivision sports-themed sweepstakes. The sweepstakes will be timed for the 4th quarter of the year. You have no idea who George Plimpton is.
You've totally lost me here.
Okay.
Please.
Okay. I'm setting the stage here historically. George Plimpton was a writer. Mm-hmm. He had a reputation as sort of an intellectual. Mm-hmm. He spoke with this very New England accent, which makes him sound very sophisticated. He was Ivy League trained, this kind of guy. And he becomes famously the poster boy. Plimpton is pimping Intellivision. Remember, Intellivision is Mattel's 16-bit console that's going up against the VCS. Has very small market share. And this is just now this weird sweepstakes where they're trying to promote the sports games on the Intellivision. And this is going to lead to a famous series of George Plimpton ads for Intellivision, where they are going to directly compare the graphics on the VCS with the graphics on the Intellivision. And they're basically attack ads. For the system, with this guy as the spokesperson. And so when we get to the actual TV ads, it's going to be rather cool. And they pull out all the stops. There's later on the little kid who was the main actor in E.T. shows up in them and all sorts of stuff. It gets weird.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, I'll post a link to the commercials in the show notes just for anybody who hasn't seen them before. But yeah, George Plimpton coming in here. This is going to be similar to the way Coleco was doing comparison ads between Coleco's handheld football and Mattel's handheld football, which Michael Katz worked on Mattel's handheld football, and then immediately his first day on the job, he's signing the contracts to do this attack ad against it. Mattel is going to learn the lesson and do attack ads against Atari. So
fun times.
Oh yeah.
Sega does what Nintendo and
exactly. Okay. It started with Coleco. Mattel's going to continue that tradition.
In the meantime, Imagic enters the game publishing fray.
The second third-party publisher to hit the scene, iMagic, at least, I'll get to the details. It may have been second, may have been third. All depends on how you measure it. Has hired ad agency Key, Donna, and Pearlstein to represent them with an expected $1 million in ad billings.
Okay. So, I mean, what all those stories show that in 1981, the home business really was picking up speed.
Not just picking up speed. iMagic is one of these, I almost want to say legendary companies, because their games, the packaging is totally high end. The quality of the games technically is extremely high, but they're also going to come out with tons of advertising. Yeah. And remember, right now at this point, there's only one company who has third-party games out on a game console, and that is Activision. Yeah. And Activision got sued by Atari, but they still got away with it, and they're making a ton of money off of their games. And iMagic, again, Alex Smith, friend of the show, his podcast, They Create Worlds, he just this last week released an episode all about iMagic. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. iMagic ends up getting, I think it's $2 million in venture capital funding.
Oh, Lord.
Well, and that's the thing. Now that Activision has proven that this works, Activision had a little bit of VC capital, but actually had to take out a bunch of loans to make it pay off, to get started. iMagic basically has VC play money. And unlike Activision, which was made up primarily of programmers from Atari, the iMagic team is made up also of people from Mattel who worked on Intellivision. So they're going cross-platform. And it's not just the programmers who have left. It's managers. It's people with the sales connections and stuff. The people who knew who was buying from Atari, and so they have left and helped set this up. Yeah. Again, Alex does a great job of explaining this whole thing from a business standpoint. It's phenomenal. But they're also going to get sued by Atari. Atari is going to try to prevent the big retailers from carrying them, all sorts of crap. But the idea here at the core is this is now a third party made up of both programmers and managers from Atari and Mattel. So they are bringing the full knowledge. They don't have to invent distribution. They don't have to invent new relationships. They're coming in with all of that established, and they're going to hit the ground running. They're not going to be around for very long. It's not going to end well.
Okay, so they ran in the wrong direction. Okay.
No, they did. They went in the right direction. It's just Christmas of '82 is coming.
Okay.
That storm is coming. And remember, unlike with all the consoles that will come, or almost all the consoles that will come later, they're not paying a licensing fee to Atari. Mm-hmm. It's make as much as you want. Yeah. And as long as demand outstrips supply, that's great.
Yeah.
Once supply outstrips demand, not so great. But we still got another year before that happens. Yeah, okay. Console is over.
Console is over. PC is about to go. Byte takes a first look at the IBM PC.
Byte magazine gives a multi-page overview of the IBM PC. The availability of 3 different operating systems, available diagrams and technical information on the bus architecture to help third-party hardware developers, and releasing the BIOS code should ensure that the system becomes a vibrant platform for third-party support.
I love that they released the BIOS code.
There's no reason not to. It's copyrighted. Nobody can copy it, and if reverse engineering it doesn't make it any easier to know what the code is. You still have to do, interrupt by interrupt or whatever it is, reverse engineering. And having the code out there, in theory, makes it more difficult because it's harder to avoid seeing it. If the code is out there, the argument, no, I did it behind closed doors. Well, did you ever see the code? Well, if you did see the code at some point, now you can't be a reverse engineer. There's an argument to be made there. But yeah, ultimately, it's not going to take very long for people to reverse engineer this the same way they did with the Atari VCS. And clones will be coming.
Yeah, but I mean, can you imagine like Apple releasing their BIOS code?
Well, nowadays Apples are, up until recently, Apples were just Intel boxes, so it was the same BIOS code as a PC.
Yeah. Well, not necessarily BIOS code, but also their OS code or whatever.
Well, the OS is a different ballgame altogether. The OS is not open. Remember, they're shipping this with 3 different operating systems. You get to choose when you order it which operating system you want. If you wanted IBM DOS, which was provided by Microsoft. If you bought it from IBM, it was called IBM DOS. But you could also buy it separately from Microsoft, and it would be called MS-DOS. You may have heard of it at some point.
A little bit.
Yeah. Then there was Digital Research's CPM, CPM 86 in this case. CPM was already a well-known cross-platform operating system, but it's also cost, I think, like 3 times what the IBM DOS costs. Mm. And it comes out later. It's not really available at launch because Digital Research is dragging their feet and it hasn't gotten it done yet. And finally, there's also a third operating system, which I had never heard of before, which was Softtech Microsystems UCSD system. Never heard of it. Doesn't really take off as far as I can tell. Hmm. And the really cool, interesting bit here is that the original version of the machine does have a jack to use an audio cassette recorder as the storage device.
Okay.
So just like the microcomputers of the time that were, at this point, already moving away from disks in North America.
Yeah.
So virtually all of them were already disk-based systems, not using cassettes anymore.
Yeah.
In Europe, of course, that's going to keep going into the 90s. But you could still, in theory, store your programs on a cassette tape on an IBM PC, which I thought was just kind of cool. I don't think anybody really did it because if you were paying the exorbitant price for an IBM PC, you're going to go the extra mile and get a disk drive. But
sure.
Yeah. The review is really, really good. Byte Magazine, gives it a thumbs up, and the openness of the platform for additional providers, be it software and hardware, is really going to be, of course, its selling point, and Byte already recognizes that at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we have a new contender. What are the other parties doing in the computer market?
Sorry.
Yeah.
They are contending. Atari muscles in on Apple's educational turf.
Atari has signed a contract with the influential Minnesota school system to provide computers. For the past 3 years, Apple has had this contract, but the very reasonably priced full-service Atari 400 packages offered by Atari, full system with disk drive, black and white TV, and basic cartridge for just $579, seems to have won over the program's administrators.
Okay. Several questions.
Yes.
First, was Atari able to turn profit with those machines, or were they basically just investments to make people dependent on Atari machines, so they'll, after school, buy them as well?
$579 is not that much above the normal price for a 400. Remember, the 400 doesn't have a keyboard. It's basically just this flat
this is what I
piece
say.
of plastic. I mean, it's probably a break-even point. They're not losing money off of it, but it is probably more or less break-even.
Okay.
But, of course, if little Johnny comes home and says, Daddy, I want a computer, first question will be, well, which ones are you using at school?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so there is definitely that. And I have been listening recently to some interviews on, what's the name of the podcast again? They focus on the Atari 8-bit computers. I've kind of gone down a little bit of a rabbit hole with them. Antic is the name of the podcast. I'll put a link to them in the show notes. They've been interviewing people who were involved with Atari's educational outreach programs back in the 80s. And Atari really did make some big inroads here. And this is a huge upset because, Apple, we talked about how Apple was advertising the fact that they were the educational computer. And the Minnesota school system is really years ahead of most everybody else. Whatever Minnesota decides, everybody else is going to follow. And so Atari, by getting this coup, if they could have kept it going for a few more years, really would have been in a position to be the educational computer.
Yeah. Such as Apple was earlier. And this basically brings me to my second question. I mean, Minnesota now has a lot of Apple computers in its schools. So what should they do? Will they throw out all them Apple's computer and fill up on Atari, or how does this work?
Well, they're probably not replacing the Apple computers. They're going to keep the Apple computers. They already have a ton of software written for them.
Exactly.
But remember, Minnesota already had a ton of software written for their mainframes. Okay, this is where we get Oregon Trail. So the reality of the situation prior to the IBM PC, and nobody will know this until the second and third iteration of the IBM PC take off, is that you get a new computer, you have to rewrite your software. This is why BASIC was so important. So all of these machines had BASIC. That's why this thing comes with the BASIC cartridge. So it's you put in the cartridge and you can type in a code in BASIC. And while each computer's BASIC is slightly different, we'll have slightly different commands, especially what graphics and sound are concerned.
Awesome.
If you have a basic program that is just doing text input and output, for the most part, they're going to be compatible from one system to the next. So the basic program you wrote on the mainframe is going to work on an Atari 400, it's going to work on an Apple II, and it's going to work on a Commodore 64. And all the machines in between. And so this is why if you have all this software already made and it was written in BASIC,
you can use
getting it ported is relatively simple. You just have to retype it and maybe correct a couple things.
Yeah.
So everybody's kind of in the mood of, we need a bunch of new computers. Ooh, this thing does tons of colors. This thing does tons more sound. This thing still does BASIC. Why wouldn't we buy it?
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah. And so they're doing this, unfortunately, of course, when Atari collapses after Christmas of '82, one of the first things that gets killed is this educational program. And Apple is just going to swoop right back in and take over again. But from what I've heard, it very well could have been, had they been able to hold out for a couple more years, Atari would have become the provider of educational computers in the U.S. until at least the IBM PC took over.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but I mean, nowadays, Apple still is super, super prevalent in America.
Oh yeah. And they do a good job of, making a lot of machines available at cost and stuff. And they really have pushed the idea that, they are the educational computer. I know that we had nothing but Apples at my high school in the States. And, they were fairly useless. So, yeah, congratulations. Nice.
So the perfect computer for your education for school.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you really wanted to learn, what you're going to have to deal with later on in the business world, learn how to use a Mac. Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay.
I love insulting Apple people. Anyhow, does your Gabelli does it alone, such as we, when we keep on doing that.
Exactly. We're going to be sitting here all by ourselves. There will be nobody we haven't offended. Excellent. So, star programmer Nasir Gabelli has broken away from Sirius Software and begun publishing his games on his own through Gabelli Software, Inc. The first title, Firebird, hit store shelves on October 1st.
Mm-hmm. So it hit store shelves on October 1st. Were they sold out on October 2nd, or were they still there on September 30th, a year later?
That I cannot tell you, but yes, Gabelli Software Inc. is not going to be long for this world. Okay. Gabelli is an amazing programmer, absolutely amazing talent, but it appears he wasn't an amazing businessman. Yeah.
Well, this often goes hand in hand.
Yeah, and I talked a little bit about Nasir with Jerry Jewell, who's the co-founder of Sirius Software. That interview is up for our Patreons right now. If you want to go check it out, super interesting. The guy's got a really cool background story, and how Sirius Software dies as part of the crash and gets screwed over by 20th Century Fox is really, really cool. And what he's doing nowadays is actually almost cooler than Sirius Software, but I'm not going to reveal that. You guys got to just go and listen to the interview. Become a Patreon. We haven't done the plug yet. Support us, please. Maybe. Early access to the interviews and the video version of the 7 Minutes in Heaven, where Peter and I comment on a recording of his playing of the game for 7 minutes. Okay, this is really on the wrong place. But yeah, so he's breaking away, trying to do his own thing. Both Sirius and him are going to continue making games. And like I said, it's not going to work out for him all that well in the long run. But hey, he's then going to travel around the world. He's going to end up in Japan, and he's going to program some little games called Final Fantasy. So I think he's doing okay.
He might live.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Okay.
Speaking of people
this is actually pretty
doing
cool.
okay.
Yeah, speaking of winning. Computers can win big at chess tournaments.
Big prize money awaits the programmers of chess games that can beat grandmasters. Omni Magazine and a Dutch software firm have both announced prizes for those that can beat chess aces, and the United States Chess Federation has voted to allow computers to compete in sanctioned matches with human players. In 1983, there will be a team chess tournament in which one team will be entirely made up of computers.
I'm still fascinated on how chess works for some reason. I mean, yeah, nowadays there are games that are way more demanding, but however, I mean, realizing chess, yeah, I don't know, for some reason it startles me.
Well, chess, I mean, has, I'm not going to say a limited number of moves. There are, because of the restrictions of the board, you do end up with a relatively limited number of possible situations. And because of this, and because the strategies are so well known, a really good chess player can think through those restricted options. I don't want to call them limited, but restricted options. And that's really the key of chess, is that each piece can only do certain things. Now, the problem is, at this point in time, really thinking through too many of those options is not possible for a computer to do within the time constraints of a chess tournament. Remember, a chess tournament, each move has to happen within a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
You can't just, sit there and wait for 2 hours. And the computers, and the computers don't have the processing power, at least, especially microcomputers, to pull that off at this point. So, these competitions, which are naming specific masters of the game, who are to be beat, are kind of, partially gimmicky, but also partially kind of like, ooh, let's do the future thing, man versus machine.
Yeah.
And one of the predictions in this Byte magazine article is that they're expecting that a computer will be able to beat one of these grandmasters within the next 3 years. Now, how quickly this actually happened, I don't know, but really getting, the top tier chess players beaten by a computer is going to take a little bit more than a decade. But it is fun to see how this is evolving, and that the Chess Federation is willing to entertain this kind of activity.
Well, those chess players are minded people other than those judges from the 1941s.
Yes. Okay. And moving away from the intellectual games.
Yes, coining a phrase called adventure.
Arcade.
Damn it. Let's go for it again. Coining a phrase arcade adventure.
What might be a first, Soft Talk magazine has coined the phrase arcade adventure in their review of Castle Wolfenstein. Now, whether or not this was the actual first use of the term, I don't know, but it is the first time I've run across it. Yeah. And they seem to think that it is a new term for a new type of game. One where you combine the actiony, shooty elements of an arcade game with the exploratory and more thought-through actions of an adventure game. Mm-hmm. And in many ways, they are correct. Wolfenstein really is the arcade adventure. Now, that term is going to refer to a whole bunch of different types of games over the years, and with all sorts of different refinements. But it's a stealth game. You're moving around. You can put on disguises. You can pick up items. You can search things. You can shoot people. It really is the arcade adventure mold. So this might be the first use of that phrase. And I'm sure that if anybody can find an earlier one, it's Ethan. Ethan, you will let me know if there is an earlier use. Yes.
Okay.
I just thought that was fun.
Until Ethan did your research, Dirty Book is looking for your raunchy software creations. Oh, Lord, really?
Yeah. Bourbon Street Press has run an ad in Soft Talk asking for people to contribute their pornographic software creations to its magazine/catalog. The best program will win an all-expenses-paid trip to the Big Easy. Mm-hmm. That's New Orleans for it's outside the U.S.
Do you really want to win a trip to the Big Easy as being a nasty guy? I mean, if you're there for, what it's called?
Mardi Gras.
Thank you. Well, then.
Well, I mean, okay. We should probably go back. Remember how we've been talking last few months about this idea that we're in this transition phase between the old world of home computing, where you bought the computer in order to write the programs that you needed, and the world where you buy the computer because software exists that you need, that you're going to buy off the store shelf.
Yeah.
And the Dirty Book kind of lives in a limbo between these two. Mm-hmm. It has some listings, and I couldn't find a copy of the first Dirty Book, but I did find a copy of Volume 2, Number 1 of the Dirty Book. And it's scanned and up on archive.org. And it's a whole bunch of descriptions of programs that people have sent in. There's even an interview with Ken Williams, I believe, about soft porn adventure. And it also has, you can order copies of the software. So it's functioning as both. I can't remember if it also had some type-in listings. It may have actually still had some type-in listings in it, similar to the way Softside magazine worked at the time. And it really is living in this limbo between the amateur programmer trying to share their creations and, we're selling software. And especially given the nature of the material, it's understandable that they're kind of, still in that limbo space.
Yeah. Let's just say it's just weird times. And I mean, also people in the US back in 1981, at least this is the feeling that I have, were way more open to, pornography than they are today.
Oh, no. Well, no, pornography nowadays
officially
is much, much more mainstream in the U.S. Now, granted, 81, it's Reagan is in power. The whole conservative thing is becoming a little bit stronger again. The heyday of mainstream porn, like, Behind the Green Door or Deep Throat, appearing in quote-unquote regular movie theaters or people going to go watch them from the late 70s.
This is what I mean.
That is over. Yeah. There's a move back, but at the same time.
Okay, sorry, I was.
Yeah, that's the 70s. And you do have this more conservative bent with Reagan's with Reagan coming into power, but at the same time you have the birth of the raunchy comedies like Animal House and Porky's coming in, and you also have in movies, a greater acceptance of more nudity and stuff built into the normal entertainment package. So this whole idea of the Dirty Book, it really fits together with Sierra releasing Soft Porn Adventure, which is this realization, if you're playing on a computer, it's probably because you're an adult, because the computers are still very, very expensive devices. And it's okay amongst adults to do this. I mean, we're not at the point yet where, you're walking through the mall and there's, bright colors and an Italian plumber, and on the shelf there's these packages you can just pick up and any kid can buy them. Mm-hmm. We're not at that point, really. I mean, you have to go to a specialty store. And so it's far enough off the beaten path nobody's thinking about it. Now, we did talk about the first software retailers popping up, but for that to really go big mainstream, then we're still almost a decade away.
Okay.
Yeah. And, well, next year we will be talking about raunchy games on the VCS. That's still coming too. We can't forget that. Oh yeah, how could I forget that? That's still coming. That'll be entertaining. Somewhat, yes.
Okay. Looking forward to bring this over to the people on a
console.
Wow.
Oh, just wait until we get to Custer's Revenge. But we still have almost a year for that, so. But it is coming.
Okay. Let's just sit this out and wait. In the meantime, the Game Master beckons you to enter his mention.
The Game Master is an online service started by Harlow Stevens Jr. and Harlow Stevens Sr. that makes online games available to members on the site. Using a mansion as the setup, multiple games, chat rooms, and even a kitchen for exchanging recipes are available over 300 baud modem connections on the service run out of Illinois.
For me as a German, thinking back to when it was here in 1981 and when you start to talk about online services, I think we've looked at you and be like, oh, you're from the future.
Yeah. I mean, and again, a lot of this has to do with the way the telephone system in the United States was set up, where local calls, for example, were free. So that took a lot of the sting out of connecting computers via telephone wires. Mm-hmm. And this is still a service that you're paying by the hour. I mean, it's not cheap. It's like $3 an hour or something.
Really?
Money back then was high, and I don't know if you still had to pay long distance call fees to Illinois, or if they had an 800 number. Not quite sure how that worked. Mm-hmm. So, this is a bit of a service. I am actually going to be interviewing the guy who developed the tech for this next week. I have an interview scheduled with him. So that will be coming at some point in the future. I'm really looking forward to talking to him. But given the articles about this, a huge chunk of this was just a straight up text system. So you could access it no matter what your computer was, a Trash 80 or a PET or an Apple II. But they also had games that had graphical interfaces like first-person dungeons, which then required an Apple II to run through the graphic interface on the Apple II. So it's a pretty cool sounding setup. The magazines at the time all seemed to be very excited about it and of the experience in it. But yeah, it's one of those things where I haven't found any screenshots of what it actually looked like and what the interface was like. And at 300 baud, obviously it's very, very limited in what it can do. But if you're just doing text, it shouldn't be a problem. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that interview. And it was just kind of cool to find this games dedicated online service all the way back here. And it's not saying it's the first online games people can play, because we've had online games before, especially through the other services, but this is the first one that's really dedicated to games.
Okay. Speaking about dedication to games, Mike Blanchard profiled in New York Times.
Very nice transition. The New York Times has an extensive article about a young gamer by the name of Michael Blanchard. He is one of the arcade game whizzes popping up around the country. He has decided not to go to college, much to his parents' chagrin, and instead works in an arcade and competes in competitions.
I mean, he works in it. But also, I do not really get is why does the New York Times do an article about a gamer boy?
Well, it's because this is a phenomenon that's popping up everywhere. If you look in local newspapers, one of the big things that keeps popping up as articles is, local boy at the 7-Eleven played asteroids for 23 hours straight or something. This is becoming a very common story to hear in local news. And this has become a billion-dollar industry. I mean, the coinop business alone, people are spending tons of time there. It is increasingly becoming this fear thing of, the kids are going to waste away popping in the quarters into this machine that it better be gambling. Otherwise, why are they wasting their money? With shades of the 1940s coming back. And very much, it's becoming kind of this weird, nobody really understands, are these mind control machines? It's around this time we're going to get the urban legend of Polybius, the mysterious arcade game that people said they saw that was just a mind control device developed by the government, and put on site to test to see if they could control people's minds who played the game and stuff. So, yeah, it's one of those phenomenon, and they're using this one guy, and a few other people get mentioned in the article who are also gamers, but they're using this one guy as a profile example of stuff that's happening in other places of the country too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good for him. I mean, good for him. Good for him.
He's got a little bit of promotion out of it, at least. Hey, that's got to be worth something.
Is there a follow-up of what became of him?
No, I didn't actually look to see. No, wait, sorry. I stand corrected. I even have the link here in my show notes of what became of him. And 1 second. Oh, yes. So Michael Blanchard is going to go on to write a book on how to beat video games. He writes 2 books in 1982. His first one is How to Beat Video Games, and that became a bestseller, and sells 80,000 copies at least in the first year. And then he wrote a syndicated newspaper column, and while writing that column, he released his second book, How to Beat Atari, Intellivision, and Other Home Video Games. So, and this syndicated thing would show up under different names in different newspapers. And so, yeah, so that's what Michael Blanchard ends up doing. But he gets his first touch of fame, if you will, in this article in the New York Times, as far as I can tell. Probably also got some other kind of thing in between. There's also an interview with him over at Atari Compendium. I'll include a link to that. Yeah. I think he might also have a website where all of this stuff is posted. All of his newspaper articles can also be read online. So, yeah. So, but this is a very short-lived fad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he wasn't destroyed by the new forms of entertainment. Good for him.
Yeah. And I mean, he then leaves the industry and goes and does his own thing. And
he left?
Yeah. He also doesn't really follow games anymore and stuff.
Huh.
Yeah.
So you can get out. This is good. All right. Speaking about getting out.
Oh yeah, we're done. That was the last story.
Yeah.
Woohoo! We're free at last. So, that just leaves one order of business: the word of the episode.
The word of the episode today is raunchy.
Raunchy. Mm-hmm. I can get behind that. Okay, so raunchy it is. And, I guess we just have to repeat the usual. Everybody, hope you had a good time. If you like what we're doing, help us out on Patreon. $1 a month will get you access to our video content, the 7 Minutes in Heaven video segments, as well as early access to our interview episodes, typically 3 months in advance. We've got 3 interviews up there right now that non-Patreons cannot access. And, if you have any comments for us, questions, corrections, whatever else, you can reach us on Twitter. You can send us an email. We're on Instagram as well. All the links are in the show notes below.
Yeah, so many options.
So many options. You will not even know what to do with all the options. It is Option City. We sell options, and that's all. Okay, Peter.
All right.
As always, a pleasure, and I'll see you next time.
Exactly. Bye-bye.
Bye.